Here are rankings at quarterback, tight end, and defense to help you figure out who to start for week one. Tier 1 at quarterback, we don't have to talk about these guys. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, start them every single week regardless of matchup. Tier 2, we say the same thing. Start these guys every single week regardless of matchup. You don't even need a backup quarterback if you have one of these guys. Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, Mahomes, Lamar. Now I know you're going to be screaming at me saying, oh my gosh, Mason, Lamar Jackson's way too low. Anthony Richardson's way too high. And clearly Lamar is a way better real life NFL quarterback. And I think that I would way rather have Lamar Jackson in our rest of season rankings than Anthony Richardson. But y'all know I trust these Vegas sportsbooks with the totals that they put out. And right now they are projecting this Indianapolis Colts and Houston Texans game to be much higher scoring than what you actually have with the Chiefs and Ravens on Thursday night. And we look at Anthony Richardson and going, well, yes, he's an injury risk. While yes, he is unproven, that doesn't really matter for week one if you are projecting out rushing volume. If you go and look at underdog pick'ems, right now for Lamar Jackson to score a rushing touchdown week one, you actually get a 1.63x multiplier. Whereas if you're going to be comparing this with Anthony Richardson, you actually only get a 1.06x multiplier. So Underdog even has Richardson more likely to score a rushing touchdown than Lamar. And at the same time, they're higher, lower passing yards, both at 220.5. So the passing volume should be very comparable. So for those reasons, given the matchup, I will go Richardson. I'm going to go Stroud over Mahomes as well, because right now sportsbooks are saying that the Houston Texans should score more points than the Kansas City Chiefs. The Ravens, the Chiefs, they have good defenses. Obviously, rest of season, we would rank these guys over Richardson and Stroud. And if you disagree with this, Mason, you go, oh my gosh, Mason, you're a clown. Lamar shouldn't be this low. You can head over to Underdog Fantasy. You can take Lamar higher, 220.5 passing yards. You can take Lamar to have a rushing touchdown with the 1.x multiplier as well. But personally, I think that those projections are probably accurate. But if you wanted to, you can find that link in the description, comment section. If you use code FLOCK when you sign up to Underdog Fantasy, you're going to get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. You are also going to be getting a Travis Kelce special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard for Thursday night's game, and a Christian McCaffrey special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard for Monday night's game. And you will get my 2024 rankings, draft guide, and ADP consensus cheat sheet, all with code FLOCK with the link in the comment section. Now, going over to our next tier, we are going to look at Kyler Murray at 7. Now, Kyler should be in a lower scoring offense than a couple of the other quarterbacks in this range, but you do have the rushing upside for Kyler Murray. Like if you are comparing these guys at the moment, right now the pick'em for Kyler week one, you do have him higher, lower 31.5 rushing yards, the 1.66 multiplier for him to score a rushing touchdown. You go over and you look at Jordan Love, and with Jordan Love, his higher, lower rushing yards is only 6.5. So you have just the projectable rushing volume for Kyler. They should be trailing the Buffalo Bills, where Buffalo is favored by about 5.5 points. So I do think that you get a considerable amount of passing attempts for Kyler Murray. Now, Jordan Love, Joe Burrow, these guys are obviously high value and high volume passers. The issue is in a 4-point passing touchdown format, they won't necessarily have the rushing upside to be able to compete with those guys like Lamar, Anthony Richardson, and Kyler Murray. You actually have Joe Burrow in the Cincinnati Bengals projected to score more points than the Green Bay Packers this week. My thought process, though, is if you're looking at the spread on these games, right now, you actually have like an 8-point spread between New England and Cincinnati. So I very well think you could see Cincinnati running the ball a ton in the second half, not having to rely on Burrow. And obviously, this Chase saga has gone on way too long. Now, dropping down to our next tier, I am going to have to consider 2 quarterbacks here for my starting lineup week one. So in the Flock League, I decided to wait until the very last 2 rounds to take my 2 quarterbacks. Figured we'll swing on some guys that have upside. If not, we'll just go the streaming route. I don't have Jaden Daniels. I wish I did. I think Daniels is a very fine play. If you are looking at his matchup this week, they do have an applied team total of about 20 points going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And even if Daniels is a bad real-life NFL quarterback, just from a rushing perspective, he should get there. I mean, if you are looking at the underdog pick'em currently for Jaden Daniels, this is a quarterback that they have at 39.5 rushing yards higher, lower, and a 1.28x multiplier for him to score that rushing touchdown. Tua and Goff actually should have a ton of passing volume. Right now, the Detroit Lions are projected out to be the highest scoring offense in the NFL this week. Tua and the Miami Dolphins are right up there as well. My thought process is we know these quarterbacks aren't going to be running. And at the same time, we know that these are two offenses that want to run the ball. We've seen what Miami has been able to do with Achane and Mostert. Now you add in Jalen Wright into the mix. You have both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs for the Detroit Lions. So these should be two very high scoring offenses if you're playing in a 6-point passing touchdown format, or if you're playing in a league where you get 1 point per 20 passing yards. I think both are extremely viable and you can move them up. Now, the two guys that I've been deciding between, Caleb Williams and Brock Purdy. Now, I am very hesitant to go out there and play any rookie week 1, of course. My thought process here is if you look at Vegas sportsbooks, they currently are giving the Chicago Bears an implied team total of about 24.25 points, which is 1 point higher than what the Niners have this week, because Tennessee is a much better matchup than what you have with the Jets. So if you're telling me that this week in particular, obviously this is not the case rest of season. Rest of season, San Francisco is going to be blowing Chicago out of the water with total points scored. But this week, given the matchups, you actually have Caleb Williams projected to score more points in Chicago than the Niners will. And we know that Caleb has some rushing upside where Purdy just doesn't. Now, Caleb doesn't have a ton of rushing upside. His multiplier to score a rushing touchdown on Underdog this week is 2.26x. He is at 16.5 rushing yards, higher, lower. So he's not Richardson. He's not Lamar. He's not Daniels, but he's definitely going to run the ball a little more than Purdy. The Bears supposed to score slightly more points than the Niners this week. So how I'm feeling right now is I think I'm going to be starting Caleb Williams. But if you think I'm wrong, please let me know in the comment section. I do value your opinion. Now, our next tier is going to be Dak Prescott at 15. With Dak, you'll be much higher than this in the rest of season rankings. I am no defensive expert. We'll talk about the defensive rankings in just 1 second. But it does appear that Vegas sportsbooks are telling us the Cleveland Browns have one of, if not the best defenses in the NFL. You actually have Dallas as underdogs in this game. Right now, sportsbooks are projecting Dallas to only score about 19.5 points. We know that Dak doesn't have a ton of rushing upside to overcome this. So I think you have to rank Dak Prescott behind the guys that are supposed to score more points in their respective offenses and some other guys that have more rushing upside, such as Jaden Daniels. Just this week. Now, also in this tier, we're going to have Trevor Lawrence at 16. With Lawrence, I think that you can use him as a streamer if you really want to, going up against Miami. This should be one of the higher scoring games in the NFL this week. Miami is favored in this contest as well. So there is that outside chance that the Jacksonville Jaguars are just having to air it out in the second half. We have Matthew Stafford and Kirk Cousins here as well. The Rams are supposed to be very high scoring. If you absolutely have no hesitation with Puka Nakua's injury, I think you could push Matthew Stafford to the top of this tier, because very similar to what we were talking about with Lawrence, this is supposed to be one of the highest scoring games in the NFL this week. And also the Rams are currently about 4-point dogs to the Detroit Lions. So possibly they're having to throw the ball in the second half. Now, Kirk Cousins will be our guy at 18. And then our last two tiers, I would really only stress that you're starting these guys if you play in a super deep format. That's maybe a 16-team league. You're starting these guys if you play in a super flex format. We'll have Geno Smith against Denver. Good matchup, but massive spread. They can run the ball in the second half. Justin Herbert against the Raiders. I would want to give Herbert some time, just gel with his coaching staff and his new receiving core. Deshaun Watson against Dallas. Baker Mayfield against Washington. And then at 23, I promise you, Aaron Rodgers is going to be ranked a lot higher in these rankings in future weeks. But right now, the Jets are actually only projected to score about 19.25 points this week, which is one of the worst marks in the NFL. It's because the Niners have one of the best defenses in the NFL. Sam Darnold, Will Levis, Daniel Jones will all be in this tier as well. But I do want to reiterate, you're probably not starting any of these players if you're playing in a 10-team, 12-team, 14-team format where you only have to play one quarterback. And if you are starting them, I would definitely look to the waiver wire for somebody that's higher in this rankings list. Now let's move over to tight ends. So tier 1, you don't have to consider it. Sam Laporta, Travis Kelce. Yes, Sam Laporta has been banged up during training camp. All reports are pointing that he is going to be good to go for NFL kickoff. And with Laporta, like I said, he is supposed to be in the highest scoring offense in the NFL this week. So no hesitation whatsoever. I have him in the Flock League. I'm playing him as my tight end. I didn't even pick up a backup. Tier 2, these are also guys you're playing no matter what the matchup is. You don't even need a backup. Trey McBride, Mark Andrews, and Dalton Kincaid. I think you may have additional target volume going to McBride earlier in the season. I understand that Harrison is one of these rookies that should hit the ground running. Harrison should have a very large role right away, but ultimately he is brand new to the NFL. I don't necessarily know if you can expect Harrison to immediately have a 25-30% team target share. So I think McBride has a large role early on. They're probably having to throw the ball often against Buffalo. And then honestly, I kind of want to move Kincaid higher than this because the Bills are supposed to drop 27 points this week, according to Vegas Sportsbooks. And also, you don't really know what to expect with Curtis Samuel's injury. You don't know what to expect with Keon Coleman initially. So be on the lookout. I know it may not matter to a lot of y'all for this tight end tier in particular, but we are going to be updating our rankings every single day on flockfantasy.com leading up to Sunday. And there you may end up seeing Kincaid go to the top of this tier. Now, dropping down to our next group of guys, we're going to be looking at Kyle Pitts at 6. Now, with Pitts, I think this will be one of the most interesting storylines that you have for week 1. Obviously, this is going to be a player, and this is going to be a team that absolutely everybody has their eyes on with the transition, both the coaching staff and the quarterback play. Right now, you actually have Atlanta projected to outscore about 22.5 points this week. I think you start Kyle Pitts, but definitely keep your eye on it. Evan Ingram will be our next guy. Evan Ingram's supposed to be in a similarly scoring offense. Obviously, with Ingram, we actually have the volume from last season. And what you want to say is, okay, if he gets a little luckier with touchdowns this year and that volume maintains, then Evan Ingram could very easily be a top 5 tight end in a full PPR format. So if you wanted to play it safe and for whatever reason you had Kyle Pitts and Evan Ingram both on your squad, I think you could move Ingram up to 6. And then we're going to go George Kittle at 8. Now, Kittle is going to be a lot higher than this in our rest of season rankings, which of course you can find on the site. But nonetheless, this is a tough matchup going up against the Jets. This week in particular, we're moving the Jets players down rankings. We're moving the Niners players down rankings. It's similar to Kansas City and Baltimore, just to a lesser degree, where these are two great teams with solid defenses. So I'm not going to fault you whatsoever for just being a little bit lower than you would be in other weeks. Now, dropping down to our next tier, Jake Ferguson, very tough matchup against Cleveland. Right now, you actually have the Browns as about 2.5-point favorites. But between Ferguson and Njoku, I think that Jake Ferguson has less target competition. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb is much better than what you should expect with Amari Cooper. But also in Cleveland, you have Jerry Jeudy, you have Elijah Moore. And I do think the combo of Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore will take more targets away than the combination of Brandon Cooks and Jalen Tolbert this year. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to look at Dallas Goedert at 11 and Brock Bowers at 12. Couple different notes here. One, Brock Bowers is a rookie tight end. This is somebody that you should expect to start slower at the beginning of the year and expand his role as the season goes forward. In my rest of season rankings, of course, I have Brock Bowers ranked ahead of Dallas Goedert. In my rest of season rankings, I have Brock Bowers in the same tier as Jake Ferguson and David Njoku. The issue is, if you are looking at Goddard versus Bowers, right now, you actually have a 7-point difference with these teams' implied team totals. And with Dallas Goedert, this is an NFL veteran. He should have that very large role right away week 1. And while, yes, we're possibly a little bit concerned about what the Jahan Dotson role does to the tight end here, because this is finally the first time the Eagles may have a viable third option in this passing game, I wouldn't expect Dotson to do much early in the season. Now, going over to our next tight end, we are going to be looking at Dalton Schultz at 13. With Schultz, the issue is very easily Dell, Diggs, and Nico all project to be ahead of him. So at the very best, you're looking at Schultz as the 4th option in the passing game. Plus, you have Mixon coming over, so this team may end up running the ball a decent amount, but the implied team total is pretty high here. Now, I'm making these rankings for a full PPR format. If you're playing in a non-PPR league, I actually think you move Taysom Hill higher than this. This is a situation where the New Orleans Saints should have no issue winning this game against the Carolina Panthers. It's one of the very few teams New Orleans is going to be heavily favored against. And you go through and look at Miller on the IR, Jamal really not being an impact player last season. It does appear that Taysom is going to have a very large red zone role based off the running back rotation, as well as the preseason usage that you have. Now, obviously, I'm not expecting Taysom Hill to have the same amount of target volume that you would get from a player like Dalton Schultz. So I do want to reiterate, Taysom, in a non-PPR format, I'm going to be moving him up. In a full PPR league, I think this is about where he belongs. But 100% somebody that should be rostered in your league if you are able to classify him as a tight end. Now, dropping down to our next tier, this is something else that I may have to update on flockfantasy.com. At the time of this recording, I don't think I've seen a Tucker Kraft report. If Kraft misses, I think you can move Luke Musgrave up higher than this, just because then at that point, you don't really have to worry about any potential Tucker Kraft role. Luke Musgrave would for sure be in the mix in what should be one of the highest scoring offenses of the week. But I just don't know what's going to happen with Kraft. If Kraft plays, I may even move Musgrave behind Pat Freiermuth. If you look at Freiermuth, we actually got news that it sounds like Jalen Warren's playing and Roman Wilson may be playing this week. And I know this doesn't matter for the majority of y'all, but for you underdog sickos, I've been drafting Roman Wilson nonstop in round 18 over the past month. So I'm really hoping that he actually does something. But Freiermuth, very safe option, very safe role. Now, dropping down to our next two tiers. I would really advise that if you have one of these tight ends as your starter, you potentially try to make a play for somebody else, or at the very minimum, you roster two tight ends from week to week perspective and hoping that you can hit on the next guy like Sam Laporta. Komet here should be in a decent offense this week, but the usage with Gerald Everett was a little concerning. Cade Otton, very inefficient tight end last year, but has a guaranteed role. Noah Fant at 19. Noah Fant did absolutely nothing in fantasy last season, but gets a good contract with Seattle. Decent matchup against Denver. Hunter Henry is very easy to project out to have a massive role here in New England. The issue is the New England Patriots project to score significantly more points than every other offense in this tier. So you kind of want to just be lower on the New England guys overall because the touchdown upside may not be there. Tyler Conklin at 21 will be higher in these rankings other weeks. This is just a very tough matchup for him going up against the Niners. And then our last tier, we're going to have Jonnu, Jawan Johnson, Mike Gesicki, Ben Sinnott, Greg Dulcich, and Isaiah Likely. Some guys like Ben Sinnott are going to be much higher in my rest of season rankings. I just don't necessarily know what to expect week one. And I'd say the same thing with Jawan Johnson. Make sure you're monitoring him if you are planning on playing, because obviously this is someone that you need to make sure will be good to go for week one. Now, moving over to our defensive rankings. I am very worried, and I want to be honest with you. This is my first time playing fantasy football with the defense and kicker for years. I know that sounds crazy, but for the Flock League, we decided, let's throw in a defense, let's throw in a kicker. Most people play with them. And most quote-unquote experts, obviously I'm not an expert, I'm an idiot with a microphone, but most expert leagues, you don't have defenses, you don't have kickers. So this is a start-sit decision I used to not have to worry about. Now that we do, it's nerve-wracking, so I wouldn't trust me as your only source here for sure. Tier 1, I'm going to go Cincinnati. Until we see otherwise, New England has the worst offensive line in the NFL, the worst starting quarterback in the NFL, and one of the worst wide receiver cores in the NFL. Right now, sportsbooks are projecting the New England Patriots to be by far and away the worst offense in the NFL this week. There's a massive spread on this game, so you probably will see New England dropping back to pass in the second half, where Cincinnati can generate sacks, they can generate turnovers. I don't think Cincinnati's the best offense in the NFL this season. By no means would I rank them defense number one rest of season, but specifically for week one, I'm going to do it, which terrifies me because I'm going up against Thomas in the Flock League, and he has Cincinnati as his defense. But anyway, going over to our next spot, we're going to have Seattle at 2 now. With Seattle going up against a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix in his first NFL start ever. I know Nix looked good in the preseason, but right now, if you are looking at Vegas sportsbooks, they are projecting the Denver Broncos to score the second fewest points this week. Very large spread on this game as well, so you can see a lot of Bo Nix dropbacks, can see sacks, can see turnovers in the second half. New Orleans going up against Carolina. This is just another spot that we want to be targeting. Now, the Niners going up against the Jets. This is the defense that I drafted in the Flock League. Just expecting the Niners to be one of the best defenses week in and week out. In terms of where we would be putting them in our rest of season rankings, probably at the top. Obviously, I want to give the benefit of the doubt to Aaron Rodgers. But, I mean, if you are looking at implied team totals, Vegas sportsbooks are saying the Jets only score like 19 and a half points this week. So, I don't know. This Niners defense is just so damn good. The Chargers at 5 going up against the Raiders. Smash spot against Minshew. The issue is the spread on this game isn't actually massive. It's just the over-under is extremely low, so there shouldn't be many points scored by either offense. And what you typically want when you are starting a defense is that massive spread, because you want your opposing offense having to drop back a ton. That way we can get those sacks and turnovers we keep talking about. Cleveland in here at 6, very similar to San Francisco, will be much higher than this in the majority of rankings going forward. The issue is it is a tough matchup against Dallas. Then our next tier, we're going to go Atlanta, Dallas, Minnesota, Tampa, and Chicago. Just targeting some key matchups. Pittsburgh Steelers project out to be a very bad offense this week. The Giants obviously project out to be a very bad offense all season. Going down to our last two tiers, I would say that these are defenses that probably not super excited to start. I mean, the Bills have a massive spread in this game, but obviously Kyler Murray does have upside to crush you. The Jets have a very strong defense, but the Niners project to be the best offense in the NFL this season. The Giants, I don't think are a great defense, but who knows? You could have a massive just Sam Darnold meltdown. And the last tier of defenses, I probably wouldn't look to start this week. I think Kansas City obviously would be much higher in our rest of season rankings, but just specifically this week going up against Baltimore, I do want to just pump the brakes a little bit. But I really hope I was able to help you out with these rankings lists. Please let me know in the comment section if you want me to include these defensive rankings every week. Like I said, I'm by no means an expert, barely know what I'm doing there. But I really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day. And of course, if you wanted to take advantage of that Travis Kelce special pick on more than less than half a total yard for week 1 and the Christian McCaffrey special pick on more than less than half a total yard for Monday night, you can find both of those over on Underdog Fantasy. If you use code FLOCK, you're going to get a 50% deposit bonus. You're going to be getting our rankings, draft guide, and ADP consensus cheat sheet as well, plus those 2 special pick'ems. But I really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day, and really hope I get to see you out with the live stream later tonight.